obviously it's quite important to show that because that's obviously why we're here, that's why we're doing what we're doing. And part of what we do, you know, that's not, if somebody goes out and gets into a fight, that might not necessarily be the outcome, but the fact is that they might not have meant to kill Lloyd, but they did because they didn't stop, they didn't know when to stop, they would maybe because they were drunk. I mean, they had a history of violence, so it was probably only a matter of time before they went too far. But the fact is that there are a lot of people out there that die that are unheard of because either somebody's thrown a punch or even they've tripped over, hit their head on a pavement, had a bleed and died. You know, so it's so easily done, and people think that they're more robust than they are, and you know, unfortunately that's not the case. So although, you know, so we're going into schools basically trying to raise awareness and say, you know, it does only take one kick or punch to the wrong area of the body, and that could be the consequence. I mean, it's happened several times since. There was an incident in Cheddar, Minehead, trying to think, there's a couple of other places as well where there's been incidences which have been either death by secondary or as a direct result of an attack. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use real life story, something that actually happened, to wake people up to the fact that violence can kill people. So what, just sort of throwing open to a discussion, you know, how does that sort of make people feel in the room?
I've actually been one of those people, not gone out and just attacked someone, but someone's upset my family, or they've upset friends, and I've been out drinking with my friends and we've seen them and I've gone and done things like that, but not to the extent of where I've actually kicked someone when they've been on the floor, because I don't do that. If I hit someone and they hit the floor, I'd leave them and I'd walk away, because satisfaction as far as I'm concerned is done. But that was mind blowing. That's all I got to say. That's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
I think that's one of the problems with today's level of violence, is that young people, and it does seem, well, and young adults as well, don't know when to stop. You know, the days where, you know, and this came up time and time again in conversation with my family around that time, you know, why didn't they stop? You know, the days when, you know, there used to be a dispute in a pub and you used to go, right, okay, me, you outside, you'd have a punch up, one person would go to the ground, the one still standing's the victor, fine. But now it's that, right, he's on the ground, let's damn well make sure he's not going to get up again, and so they'll keep going.
And being with a group of people, especially, you know, you egg each other on, especially in a fight. Yeah. You know, and if your friends are getting more hurt, and that, you'll go over and help them. You know, like you saw in the video, you saw his friends trying to like stop them, but the people that were doing what they were doing were just too strong for them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, alcohol-fueled frenzy, really. But you know, and that's so. Again, that's why we're trying to speak to young people, because you know they're going. You know, if you're speaking to a big school, you're going to have the sheep, the leaders. You're going to have all those different people. So if you can get it across to, you know, the leader, then that will filter down. But if you can get it through to those that are more the followers, then you're also, you know, if you influence all of them, they might band together against. Yeah.
So what we find in schools a lot of the time, a lot of sort of young people work with, oh, I don't get involved in that sort of stuff. I'm not violent. I don't get involved in any of that. And when we open up and we start having these discussions, we start thinking about like fights break out in school. What do you do? And like, a lot of them think, oh yeah, I'm one of those people that go along in that gang and stand by and shout fight and give them an audience and egg them on. And actually, then they start to realise actually that is impactful in that situation. And they don't think they're anything wrong, and quite often they're just going to everybody else's game. I'm like, yeah, but everybody's going to everybody else's game, and if you didn't go, there wouldn't be that crowd, there wouldn't be that pressure. And they don't think about that until we start to talk about things.
I think that video is definitely more hard-hitting than when you see the CCTV. You know, the CCTV, yes, you can see a blurry image hit somebody else, but it's, like that is more doing the reenactment.
Did he hit him with a bottle?
Yeah,
I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought a wooden sign, was it?
Post.
But right at the end, those final images. The whole point of those is to show that it's not just the one problem. So we've got CCTV
Yeah, 'cause that
footage
was
of
one.
lots of
There's quite a
different.
lot of things going on, and I couldn't really
That
That
focus
was
was
all
on.
different, all different sorts of
Mm.
similar violent crimes on the same sort of time zone.
Yeah, and that was something I was trying to get my head around. So much things going on.
Yeah.
It's really hard to actually take in.
Yeah, I mean, because that was, I mean, there's familiar faces like Sophie Lancaster and Damilola
Some of them
Taylor.
I've actually seen around Taunton.
So they-
You know, Lloyd's friends and that, I've seen
Yeah.
around Taunton. You know, it's just amazing. You know, that they can actually still walk in Taunton.
Yeah, I think it took a while.
Mm.
But
It's still taking a while for some of them, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it will be. I think it's something like your family said, something you'll never ever get over. You know what I mean? And people like me don't ever actually see what damage we can actually cause to families.
Mm.
But I think a lot of it is through violence, is the way kids are actually brought up
Mm.
and the environment they're
I
brought up
think the
in.
reason that what we do in schools works so well as well is because it's quite hard sometimes, but we don't go in with the attitude of like who did this are really bad. I mean, obviously, we don't go in there like if you're a violent person, you're a horrible
Yeah.
person. We're very much kind of this is what happened. Tell it from sort of both points of view and let them make up.
How do the children take it when you go into the schools?
Really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I suppose you've
it's
got to be
amazing.
careful, especially in Taunton, because their
We've had family
families
members.
would obviously be.
Yeah, we've had people that knew the guys that did things in sessions we've done.
Yeah.
And I think because we go in and we're not like ultra, they're really bad,
Yeah.
and we're very much telling it as it is and discussing it through and looking at reasons for violence and why it happens, and you know, they're very accepting and take it on board a lot more than if we just went in and said, right, and it's violence, really bad person, and that's it.
Yeah. There's
Um,
consequences for them.
Yeah, they wouldn't be so open, but because we work through a whole process and we're quite often there for like a day, and they do lots of different workshops, lots of different angles on it, they take more in and they're much more likely to open up and take things in, and they do start to look at their own behaviour a lot more than if we just said, you're bad. They take it on board more and that they'll come back with us and they still accept there's the consequence to that, and then they start looking at, oh, well, I drink and I do that sort of thing and that can happen to me. But if we just went in and said they're awful, they're bad,
Yeah.
and got angry about it, we wouldn't
Yeah.
get anything out of the young people. And
Yeah.
they come up with excuses as to why they might have done it, which is like, sometimes you can say, look, shut up, but we don't.
Yeah.
We take on what they're saying and then they work it through a process and they come to the conclusion that, yeah, it's not acceptable and they are these people. They come to that in their own conclusion, really. But that's when we've had like people that have known them and been their family, have not walked out of our sessions, have that they've stayed there to the end. We did one, we didn't even know that they were related until like the end of the day. And it was only when they saw a few people, they got a bit angry at some point, didn't they? But actually they went through the whole process and they came out of it quite happy with what we've done and accepted of what we've said. And it went in a lot better, whereas if we'd shut them down the first sort of lesson, carried on with that approach.
And I think that's very much the same for any setting that we deliver this in, and also the same case if, you know, taking that out into raising awareness in the community. You know, we've all got our own opinions and views on, you know, some people think people like that should be hanged, some people think they should be tortured, some people think life should mean life. You know, there's all of these different things and we all have our own personal views on these things. But when you're out in the community and when you're out talking, so like with you guys, you might choose to want to come into schools, you might choose to want to do stands, but no doubt you'll all be helping in everything. You know, if you get somebody approach you that has a particular view, it's trying to accept that view, whether you agree with it or not, and just try and, you know, if it's making you uncomfortable, trying to use techniques to try and get away from that and maybe change tact. But also if they're hell-bent on arguing the toss with you, then you know, almost saying, okay, and why do you feel like that? Rather than being the sort of person who goes, no, you're wrong. You're totally wrong, get away.
To put it back on them.
Yeah.
You let them, you're there for giving them a way to discuss it through, to think it through, and actually sometimes by sharing their opinion to you and you putting it back at them, actually they end up changing their minds anyway, because they've talked it through and they realise actually that sounds so stupid. And that, but if you didn't and you shut them down straight away, they wouldn't go through that process and actually you wouldn't have any impact that way.
Which people do you actually get more reward out of going in and speaking to and getting a lot of response back?
It depends. Most of the work that Carly's done. We've recently started doing youth offending team, but most of the work that we've done has been secondary school.
11 to 16 years, just
Yeah.
mainstream secondary school students. And that's
Do you do a certain year, or do you tend to do that?
No, they tend to like us to come in Key Stage 4 because they think it's a little bit heavy for maybe the 11 to 13s.
Yeah.
But we have gone to seven schools now and done good up to year 7s. And quite often schools get us in if they've got a particular year group, they're getting a lot of like playground fights with, or lots of different reasons why schools bring us in.
Yeah.
And so we've got loads of different year groups, and you get something different, I think, out of each time, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, like I've found through like delivering a talk and doing a discussion, you tend to get a lot more in-depth, fiery discussion from people that have been in these sort of situations, as opposed to people that haven't. So like the mainstream schools, I mean, you've seen it with some of the schools you've been to, and Kat's been along as a volunteer to help Carly out a couple of times now, and you know, you go to some schools where they come from a bit more of an affluent area, or it might be, you know, and they just don't think that sort of thing happens to them, and so they find it really difficult to engage.
Really posh kind of schools.
Yeah.
We didn't-
They still accept it though, don't they? I
It's
think
really
it's
good.
just.
It does happen though. That was the first place I saw fun. Was it when I was at school, King's College,
Mm.
and someone wrapped a bat around somebody else's head. That was the first time I came across violence. I was in like third form then, and at private school. So it
I don't
does,
expect it, yeah.
but they
When
tend
you
to brush
break the
it.
surface
Yeah.
and start talking to the students, I think
They're free
because
house
we make it
party.
okay to talk, they open up about things they've experienced, things they've done, and actually there was
They
some
have
issues there.
experienced a few different things, haven't they?
And there's a lot of them that were like, "Well, my parents did
Yeah.
like
It's
literally
the
nothing."
social acceptance of them.
Yeah, and then there was a few that like, oh, you know, there's one that was like, you know, I've been bottled, and it was like once you start digging and they start opening up to you, actually there is an underlying problem there, but if nobody actually makes it comfortable that they can talk about it, you don't find out about it. And also like, well, they're going to leave school at some point, and it's preparing them for being out, and even if they're not sort of going to get involved themselves, it might still happen to them. It's just being personally aware of like your own safety and that kind of thing as well. So we tend to approach it from two angles depending on the audience we're working with. If it's quite clear they haven't had an experience of being involved in violence, then it's about preparing them and making them aware of choices.
It's quite scary to think that most of them have
Mm.
at senior school age. Think they've seen it. It's quite scary.
And that's why it's so important to have something around that in schools.